So today's class we will be studying part 5 of the Indian Constitution, which is the Union. It consists of the Union Executive, the entire Parliament of India, and the Union Judiciary, and a constitutional body which is the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Now, this is part 5 at a glance, okay? This is what you will be studying. The first, we have the Union Executive, which is mentioned here, the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General. Now, the entire Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha is a legislature, the Supreme Court is the judiciary, and there is a constitutional authority, which is the Comptroller and Auditor General. It's very important to understand that not all members of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have the power to enforce the laws. The entire body of the legislature is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, and their method of election is also different. But once they're elected, they form the entire Union Parliament, and out of which the Prime Minister will choose few of his PGP members, let's say, few of his loyalties, and he will give them different portfolios such as Ministry of Railways, Minister of Education, who was Dharmendra Pradhan, who stepped down recently, just yesterday. So these are loyalists of Narendra Modi, okay? It is the Prime Minister that chooses who will be a part of his Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministers, the Prime Minister, the Vice President, the President, and the Attorney General. These 5 are the only ones that have the power to enforce the law. Okay? The legislature, they make the laws. And the judiciary, they protect the law. And we have the Comptroller and Auditor General that does all the accounting for both the central government as well as the state government. Even the state needs to submit its reports to the CAG. And then the CAG compiles the reports of the entire states and submits it to the Parliament. Okay, so this is part 5 at a glance. We will be studying about the Union Executive, we will be studying about the legislature, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, which is the same as the Parliament. We will be studying about the judiciary, the Supreme Court, and lastly, we will be studying the constitutional authority, the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, Article 52 to 78 covers the Union Executive. It consists of the President, and just below the President, we have the Vice President and the Prime Minister. Okay, this is just a nominal structure, the nominal structure, which means the nominal power. The actual power will rest in the hands of the Prime Minister, but nominal head of the executive is the President, and the real head of the executive is the Prime Minister. We have discussed about that in our pre-foundation class. So the President is the head of the executive, the Union Executive. He will always be the head of the Union Executive. So anytime in an examination you get a question, who is the head of the Union Executive? The answer is the President. The only time when you can answer Prime Minister is when the question is twisted in such a way that they ask who is the real executive of the Union, who is the real head of the Union Executive? The answer is the Prime Minister. So understand this distinction. Officially, it is the President, okay? All executive actions of the entire nation, every executive action that we take, that the Prime Minister takes, that the Council of Ministers take, that every ministry takes, it's taken in the official name of the President. The President's signature is mandatory. Okay, so the President is the head, and then we have the Vice President and the Prime Minister. There's no relation between the two. The Prime Minister functions independently. The Vice President is the ex-officio head of the Rajya Sabha. We will be discussing about that later. And then we have the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister la niche there. We have the Council of Ministers, which I talked about, the different loyalists, the multiple loyalists of Narendra Modi that are chosen as his Council of Ministers. They are given different portfolios. Some of them are given a minister of a particular ministry, and some of them are given independent charges of minor departments as well. So his Council of Ministers, and then we have the Attorney General of India. Attorney General of India, why did I place it under the Prime Minister? He is not under the Prime Minister officially, okay? But technically, he advises the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. That's the job of the Chief Legal Advisor. Who is he loyal to? He is loyal to the union government, the ruling government. If Modi is the ruling government, the AGR is loyal to the government, which means he will defend, he will represent the union government in the court. So example, there's an environmental crisis in your locality, and then you go up to the Supreme Court complaining against Narendra Modi and his ruling government. Who is going to be the one to defend Narendra Modi? Attorney General of India, okay? He is the chief legal advisor to the union government. So are we clear with the union executive, the way it is structured? That's the executive, okay? The executive, just the executive. Parliament, Indian Parliament, Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha ase. Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha majude. Modi bhi Lok Sabha la member ase. Modi aro tai Lok Sabha la noile bhi Rajya Sabha la uthawo. Council of Ministers banawo, right? And separately we have the president as well as the vice president. Utala election alag ase. And then we have the Attorney General of India, who is a legal advisor to the union government. Okay, these 5 parties form the union executive. I've given a very important point for your preliminary examination. The president is the constitutional head of the union, while the prime minister is the real executive. Now we move on to the president of India. Okay. These are the 5 points that you need to know about the president of India. He is the head of the state. By state, I mean the country. India. He is the head of India. The official head of India. He is the first citizen of India. By first citizen of India, I mean he literally is the first citizen of India. Every time we take a census, who is the first one to take the census? It's always the president. Okay, serial number 1 of the entire census of India will always be the president. The president is always the first citizen of India. And he is the constitutional executive. I've explained it earlier. Every executive action that Modi ji takes, that Amit Shah takes, everything is taken in the official name of the president. So every time Modi and his council of ministers, they are able to convince the Indian parliament to enact the law, that law will contain the signature of the president. Okay. Actual decision to Modi lo, actual power to Modi la hati ase do, but every document there, president la signature thakibo. That's the rule. Without the president's signature, no executive decision can be initiated. No executive proceeding can be moved without the intervention of the president in the form of his signature, in the form of a recommendation. Okay, so he is the constitutional executive. Constitutional executive. He is the supreme commander of armed forces. Again, to make sure that India remains democratic, to make sure that India is protected from military. Sometimes the military people, they can get too powerful and they may try to usurp the democratic government that we have. They may try to overtake, right? Which is why the Indian Constitution mandates that the president is the supreme commander of the armed forces. He is the one who appoints the chief of army, navy, air force. He is the one who formally declares war against any country. He is the one that formally declares war, although he takes the advice of Narendra Modi and the Council of Ministers. Always remember, okay, the president is kind of like a puppet. It's kind of like a puppet, but again, power bhi ase. Believe in nathagan isna bhi ekta ase. But officially though, president, sob jaga de president ni loy. So as the supreme commander of armed forces, he will appoint the chief of navy, air force, and army, and he also formally declares war, and also declares peace whenever necessary, and all the defense orders are taken in the name of the president. Okay, you will have the admiral, you will have the chief of army. These people, they issue notices, they enact laws and everything. They do it, but it will always contain the signature of the president. Again, okay, he is the supreme commander of armed forces. He is a symbol of national unity. The president is a symbol of national unity. Okay, which means he makes sure that the armed forces are united with the Indians. He makes sure that Narendra Modi, right, he doesn't try to supersede the limitations of his power. He makes sure that everything is properly well tangled, well connected, well united. He is the symbol of national unity. Now, election of the president, very important. Okay, election of the president. Now, do you guys have any idea about how our MLAs are chosen? What is the system that we use? We discuss about that, okay. We discuss about that in our pre-foundation class. First past the post, okay. First past the post means whoever gets highest vote, he wins. Okay, for example, there are 10,000 voters, let's say, in Dimapur, and somebody gets 2,000. It's still possible for him to win if the rest of the 8 candidates get 1,000 each. He is the one with the highest vote, right? But the election of the president is very, very different. Okay, in the next slide, I will be explaining to you how the election is done. It'll be a little complicated, and you don't even need to know how the calculation is done. It's not needed for your preliminary, your mains examination. They're never going to ask. They have never asked us, and I'm quite sure they will never ask how the voting system is calculated. You just need to know the term. It's called single transferable vote. Okay, single transferable vote. I will explain the meaning very briefly in the next slide. Now, who can vote? Kun vote yo pare? Public can vote yo na pare de. Remember, public can vote yo na pare. Elected members of Lok Sabha, the members of the parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, the entire members of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they can vote. Okay? And then elected members of Legislative Assembly, which means yati la ami kan laga MLA so president garni vote kore de. So vote kore. And then elected members of Legislative Assemblies of Delhi and Puducherry. Again, Legislative Assemblies of the Union Territories. 3 Union Territories have their own Legislative Assembly. Okay, but in the Indian Council, Delhi, Puducherry, and Jammu Kashmir. Puila Jammu Kashmir do state thakisido, and then it became a union territory alongside Ladakh and Jammu Kashmir. Division hoisido na, and then Ladakh or Jammu Kashmir ulaise, and then puila do Jammu Kashmir state thakado got divided into Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh, and both these two are union territories at the moment right now. And then Jammu Kashmir has their own legislative assembly. Okay, alongside Delhi and Puducherry, but it's not mentioned in the constitution. So the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir still doesn't have the power to vote for the president. We will get it eventually, I think. Hado I jawo, but itiada to only Delhi and Puducherry. Remember that, okay? Very important distinction. Elected members of Legislative Assemblies of Delhi and Puducherry, which means Legislative Assembly do Nagaland la Legislative Assembly nishna down do MLAs kan ase. In other union territories, neither. It is controlled directly by the president, who appoints chief commissioners or lieutenant governor and so forth. Administrators appoint guna direct rule kore. Daman and Diu to Andona, Andaman and Nicobar Island, tate legislative assembly na election kan naloide. So only these 3 union territories, Delhi, Puducherry, and Jammu Kashmir, and out of these 3, only the elected members of Delhi and Puducherry, khali udu tuita union territory la MLA kan vote yo pare for the president. Now you understand. Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha la ase, state MLA kan ase, aro union territories la MLA ase. Khali MLA or MP ekla president ke vote yo pare. Now it looks very complicated. The single transferable vote. You guys can go back home, watch the lecture, rewatch the lecture, and try to understand this particular. It also took me a lot of time to create this, okay? But here's how STB works. Quota calculation. First, the quota calculation is for the president, quota means reservation quota nishna indigenous quota ina thake do. To minimum kiman power lage ba ase. Minimum kiman power lage vote to. Okay. So at the moment, today's aji kali laga total vote value do India la do around 10 lakhs inas de total vote value do aro MLA kala value do 5 lakh something votes aro MB khan la do 5 lakh something votes MB aro MLA la weight to na same thake vote value do calculation do alok complicated ase MLA la vote value do state population divided by elected MLAs into 1000 for example UP yate digina ase 160 crore ase ta la population do MLAs kan do down to 403 ase divided by 1000 is equal to so forth and Nagaland ase gule do 19 lakhs divided by state population 19 lakhs divided by elected MLAs 60 into 1000 ina wena ki ula ase Nagaland la vote value do MLA la vote value do itu ho so pura India la vote value do MLA khan la alag ho MP la alag ho but the rule is that the value of the MLA should be the same as the value of the MP. This is one important point that you need to understand. Okay, you don't have to understand how the vote value calculation is done. You only need to know that the vote value of the MLA and the vote value of the MP, they carry equal weight, same weight as it. That's all you need to know. Another point that you need to know is that first preference count. First preference count means, let's say tinta candidate ase. Okay, tinta candidate ase, candidate A, B or C. Now, utu tinta candidate, kiman candidate ase, sopi order la preference is up there. You will have to note it down. Abni laga cheat ekta diwo secret ballot koire, secret ballot, which means utu ballot do voting system do kun bi na janiwo lage. Secret ase, nichor ba lukai gina tik kuri gina thali de ta kan bi. Sob MP khan bi MLA khan bi. Now vote diya damde number 1 A, P and C. Okay, candidate A, P and C. Kun ke president ko diu munja abni P A खुशी पाई बोले तो A लिखिबो उते बिचिदे B उते बिचिदे C आमनी खुशी ना पाइले भी उते तीनटा ला भी लिखिबो लागे. Okay, so your first preference will get all your vote value, which means, for example, the vote value of a member of parliament right now, every member of parliament has a vote value of 700. Okay, so 700 आमनी first की कुन के दिशे उते 700 पावो. For example, आंगम president करने ताई Indian president home in Jaigo, the election Jaishe. So all of us we gave our votes to Angam. Okay, because he is our friend, he is someone that we know, someone that we trust. So your first preference is Angam, right? 700 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's say 7. 7 of us gave our first preference to Angam. So 490 points type by Jishido. Inigana D digina jai. Okay. So that's how single transferable vote. Now, what is transferable? Transferable la meaning ki ase bole do. In case Angam aro, there's two other candidates, candidate B and C. Out of these three, let's say Angam got the highest vote. Angam got the highest vote, and then but tai laga kota to pungchanai. Okay, the minimum votes that you need to get in order to be the president of India. Kota to pungchanai. Now that's when the votes are transferred. Now what is vote transfer kushi bole do? Angam ke kun first preference diche uto sob chharebi. Sob se komdi vote tan dinjun majide kun baise. Let's say candidate C, na candidate C laga candidate C do tai do ulai diside remove kori de. Since tai chance nai chitole candidate C ulai dishe. Now candidate C karne supposing I voted for candidate C instead of Angam. Angam to moila P da gise vote to. Angam second, he was my second preference. My first preference was candidate C. Now candidate C chai jeshito. So how will my vote be calculated? Mola vote to first preference la hatai diwo, second to kun aze. If it's Angam, Angam get diwo. If it's B, B get diwo. That's how the vote gets transferred. Okay. Hari ja manula vote to chare de. Our next highest kun aze. Taige utu 700 votes to diwo. That's it. The process continues until Angam reaches the majority. So it was a single transferable vote. Okay, that's how the elimination and transfer. Like I said, eliminate koribo. The one with the lowest points, eliminate koribo, and then tage kun vote ishe utukan sopla anigina. Tage first preference diakan. Tahan la anigina utu first preference to cancel koribo. To tage vote diado. The tahan sopla second preference kun ase utu do first hui jabo. Second preference can get 700 votes though, vote value though, DD vote, tak. And that's how it gets calculated, okay? So all you need to know is that there's single transferable vote. This is the kind of voting system followed for the election of the president. And second point that you need to know is the vote value of the MLA is equal to the vote value of the MP. Okay, this is to ensure federalism, division of powers, so forth, right? State aro central ke equal share diwale president now vote for the election of the president. Okay, now STV ensures majority support, right? You understand that ensures majority support, which means everyone has a part. Majority support kun kore utu ulai. Second preferences matter. Second preferences, once the candidate with the lowest points is removed, right? People who voted for him, their second preference choice will be used as first preference, and then the points were given to the second choice preference candidate. Second preferences matter. Nominated members do not participate in presidential elections. Now, the president can nominate few members to, let's say, the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha, and so forth. Okay, he has a nomination power, which we will study later. Okay, which will later. The Taiwan nominate Gushe to president get, for example, the president Tuibar election judge to Taige vote you do. The nominated members cannot vote. Okay. Actual election de jagina ulala manugan ekla vote dio pare. Mohla example Subhamar naze, mohla Lok Sabha MB do. Tai the actual election jala se. He wasn't nominated by the president. Okay, so Subhamar can vote for the president. Phangnon Konyak, she also wasn't nominated by the president. Who is a Rajya Sabha MP? She can also vote for the election of the president. But the nominated members cannot vote. Okay, now who are the nominated members? We will learn about that in the following slides. Now, as the President of India, these are your qualifications. You need to be a citizen of India. You need your minimum age should be 35 years. Remember, Lok Sabha election garne 25 years, Rajya Sabha garne 30 years, our election uto president garne 35 years as they. Uto memorize korle ahi jabo. Eventually, you must be qualified for election to the Lok Sabha, which means Lok Sabha MB ho lage noire president do. You must be qualified, which means judi apni election chaishi bole to qualify ho thaka. You are not a criminal. You are a citizen of India, and so forth. You do not have any house of profit. Profit karni business kan nai. Na politicians kan do tuan aside rules and regulations. Dulu mala MLA kan do hotel kan resort kan pura banai na. Dulu hosa do house of profit na thego lagi do. Now term is 5 years. Eligible for re-election. Okay, eligible for re-election. Now, in some countries, the president can serve a maximum of 2 terms. Inala ase, America de bi ina ase. Na, hulubi mo la de do unlimited ase, unlimited back ase. Eligible for re-election. Any number of times, president can contest in the election. That's one feature. Term is 5 years. Ina hoigina administered by the Chief Justice of India. The oath of the president. The oath means, you know, right? The promises that the president makes, the declaration, formal declaration of promises that he makes that he will be a good boy, he will look after the country well, and so forth. This oath is administered by the Chief Justice of India. In most cases, it is the president who administers the oaths of the rest. Okay, Prime Minister will ki but President kun administer go. The only one left is the Chief Justice of India, right? So it is the Chief Justice of India who administers the oath of the president. Very important. Okay, alag la no diwo, but president la do khutiwo. Since it is unique ekta so Chief Justice for administer rather. Now powers of the president. Okay, these are the 6 powers of the president. Now, the president possesses both constitutional, means powers derived from the constitution, and discretionary, which means it is in his own discretion. It is his wish. Okay, ekta independent discretionary power be ase, but he generally acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Usually the Council of Ministers, Modi and his Council of Ministers, Amit Shah gan, Dharmendra Pradhan gan, utuan pura miligina president get advice kuri there. So these 6 powers of the president, let us discuss them one by one. Now, executive power. Executive power, which means executive is someone who enforces the law, right? In what ways does the president enforce laws? In what ways is the president in action mode? Okay, so executive power, all executive actions in president's name. I've said it earlier. Modi ji ki kurilibi, every law passed, every act passed, every bill introduced will have the signature of the president. Iniga ase union government de sob jaga de president ase. Nagaland dibi sob jaga de governor ase. Okay, chief minister actual power ase, but governor la signature da sob jaga de thakibo. Ine ase. By the way, the signature of the governor in the currency note, the Indian rupee, whose signature is this? It's not the governor of a state, okay? It's the governor of Reserve Bank of India. Always remember that. Just a deviation. Now let's get back to the president. Executive powers. Taila executive actions kandu ki ase. All executive actions of the union government are taken in the president's name. First of all, tala signature sob jaga contain guluo. He appoints the prime minister officially. The prime minister, after the election is done and then there's good majority, he officially appoints the prime minister. He also appoints every governor of the state. He also appoints all the judges of the Supreme Court as well as High Court. He also appoints the Attorney General. Attorney General, who is the Attorney General? The legal advisor, right? And then the Comptroller and Auditor General, okay? And he also administers union territories. Every union territory is directly under the control of the president, right? Every union territory is directly under the control of the president. Now the president may appoint administrators, such as lieutenant governor, chief commissioner, or he could also have the legislative assembly. Okay, but even the legislative assembly is responsible to the president. They answer to the president. Every union territory. Ini the union territory matanoi. So every union territory is administered by the president. Yadi do Nagaland do state acts, state laws kan chief minister or governor la signature thakile hui jabo do. But union territory do direct president la signature thakibo lage. Okay. Now legislative powers, his law making power utu kwas do. Now he has a power to summon and to prorogue the parliament. Now we have parliamentary sessions, okay? Parliamentary sessions, sometimes there's political deadlocks, there's disagreement between the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, we have a joint sitting and this and that, okay? So anytime we have, there's a parliamentary session, it is the president that summons the parliament, and sometimes he also prorogues, which means prorogation, temporary termination of the sitting. Example, ututin ekta discuss kushe, discuss koro nai. So temporary karne do, ini terminate kuro the sitting of the house. Na utuan summons and prorogues the parliament, and he dissolves the Lok Sabha. Okay, that's one of his legislative powers. Like, he dissolves the Lok Sabha. Dissolve the Lok Sabha, it could be natural after every 5 years, or sometimes when the chief prime minister, he loses majority, he loses the support of his council of ministers or the BJP, right? To the time they Lok Sabha dissolve kurwa, he can nominate 12 members to Rajya Sabha. Okay, that's also one of his legislative powers. He can give assent to bills. Every bill, they tala assent lage. He also promulgates ordinances at times of emergency, which is the same effect as the law of the Indian Parliament. Okay, same effect, but it can just that it cannot amend the Indian Constitution temporarily as a 6 months karne, which we will learn about that later. So these are his legislative powers and financial powers. Puisa laga there, he causes the union budget to be late. Union budget is late every year. Okay, union budget is late every year. It talks about the future projections. Kiman pusa jase, kiman pusa jawala ase. So uto officially the president la signature ase. President la signature nola bichide. Uto the union budget cannot be late before the parliament. So he causes the union budget to be late. Money bill is introduced in the parliament only with president's recommendation. Again, the president doesn't have power in that. Okay, he's obligated to give his signature, but still, tala signature asedo. So that's one of his financial powers. And he also controls contingency fund of India. Now contingency fund of India the personal hati kiman puisa thaga nisna lage every year. Contingency fund is an emergency fund, okay? That is taken out from the consolidated fund of India, the main treasury of India, Union government la puisa ba ulai emergency fund contingency to spend the money on various unprecedented tragedies and calamities such as flood, volcanic eruption, and so forth. Now this emergency fund is controlled by the President of India, okay? And the budget for the contingency fund as of now is 500 crores. 500 crores. Personal 500 crores like when if he needs additional money, I get DDO. Okay, so this is one financial power of the president. We also have the judicial power. Okay, it's not just the Supreme Court, the High Court. The president also has some judicial powers, and one of which he appoints the Chief Justice of India and Supreme Court and High Court judges. I've mentioned earlier, Supreme Court and High Court judges, and appoints the Chief Justice of India. He also has the pardoning powers, pardon Gora Laga, under Article 72. Okay, which means he can grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, commutation. Utu part we will learn in the next slide. Okay, I will explain that to you. He also has diplomatic powers. He represents India internationally. Okay, treaties and agreements. Modi Jaize. Okay, he conducts a bilateral treaty with the country of Bangladesh. Signature, it's not Narendra Modi's signature. It's the president's signature. It's always a president's signature. Okay. Always remember, officially the always executive head the president ase. So Modi America de chaise, ena hoigina treaty sign gushe. Modi la signature na thego. President la ase. Okay. So it's a president. Aro ye to kill a na. Some treaties fail, some treaties succeed. Whatever it may be, Modi to ekta rough figure asado, ekta messy figure asado. He will have to do some dirty works. He will have to take some dirty actions. But the one who's officially signed should be someone clean. Sapa sabi India la image maintain go le na. So ekta president, it makes sense so. It makes sense. Okay, itu be ekta ase mohla. And another diplomatic power, he also sends and receives ambassadors. He sends ambassadors to different countries, the United Nations, and even the countries and so forth. Different organizations, he sends ambassadors of India. And he also received the ambassadors of different countries. And military power, I mentioned about the president being the supreme commander of armed forces. All the armed forces are under him, okay? He is a supreme commander. He appoints, he declares war and peace. It's mentioned here. Now, emergency powers. Emergency powers, the emergency means abnormal times. National emergency, he also declares national emergency. Now, President's Rule, Article 365 is President's Rule do state karni asade, not for the entire nation. Article 356 is state emergency. Article 352 is national emergency, but Article 356 is state emergency, which means, for example, Nagaland Devi, how many times did we have the President's Rule? We had it 4 times, okay? 4 times. In these 4 times, Nagaland was directly under the control of the Indian president. With the insurgency la issue karne. Okay, so insurgency la issue karne 4 times Mohan la Nagaland there was emergency. Okay, so forgive me, okay, for today's something. Tahan nijide kam grase, so which is why voltage fluctuation, but hopefully it won't cause any more problem. And he can suspend fundamental rights during emergency. We have discussed about that, about the different fundamental rights that can be suspended, which article cannot be suspended during national emergency. We learned about that during the fundamental rights session. We discussed about that. In the next slide, like I said, we will talk about the judicial power of the president, the power to pardon. kina maaf kuro pare. Court par judgment dina president has a power to pardon that person. Okay, for example, you stole apni kokola bishi khau mujhe dukan par kokola chor gosna aro apni ke 2 years dishido jail de ta kokola ekta karne 2 years dishido na to utu time de president ba aigena pardon kuro pare alop sentence to reduce kuro pare ai kok ekta karne ekla to 2 sal do na dibi apni bi koina police ke kui dibo court ke kui dibo ai tala do 2 moina kor dibi ekta kokola karne do na inala president la power to itu thake. And for some, he can also directly pura bhi forgive bhi kuro pare tai. It will be another power as they. It's very fascinating, right? But the president has such powers, okay? And he has done that in the past. He has pardoned a few people. More like Indian history, the Saishibule, no? So that's the pardoning power of the president. Very interesting. There are times when fair na thake, when the judgment isn't fair, if the president, it is his discretionary power, which means no one can judge him for the way that he thinks, okay? He can, if he feels like a certain judgment is wrong, that he will take action. He can reduce the sentence of that person, or he can fully pardon that person as well. It's only the president that has the power. In the state, governor be limited power ase. Okay, limited power ase, but president bishipak the president lahati ase. Utula difference we will learn about that later on. Does anyone wish to be the president of India? Did anyone ever think about such an idea in your head? It's very interesting, okay, to be the president of India, but easy to know. Easy to know. Now, in the next slide, we have the veto power of the president, okay? The power to veto. Did we not talk about the veto powers of 5 countries in the United Nations Security Council? We talked about that, right? Of almost 200 countries in the United Nations, even if everyone says yes, if one of these 5 countries says no, it's a no. So that's veto power, okay? Which means tala decision no lower lagi, not that like that. So the veto powers of the president, the absolute veto, the suspensive veto, the pocket veto, these are the 3 veto powers of the president, okay? Which means absolute veto means kunba bills can be, he refuses assent permanently. He has the power. Now all the actions are taken, all the actions of Narendra Modi are taken in the name of the president, but it is the prime minister who actually has the power. But in some circumstances, if the president really feels that that law goes against justice, okay, it goes against liberty, then the president can use the absolute veto option, which means he can refuse assent permanently. He doesn't have to reject it, he doesn't have to complain it, he just needs to refuse. That I refuse crucially. Like I said, no act, no law can be passed without the signature of the president. So the bill cannot be passed. Okay. Very rare. Kilo the president be prime minister laga puppet. Nisna thage na. Suspensive veto. Suspense se rakhi de. Okay. Bill kan dalahate aiwa signature gane. Now without the president signing the bill, it cannot be introduced in the parliament. So suspensive veto means ek par garne suspense ragi, he sends it back for reconsideration. Ek par bhabi sabi, okay, ek par bhabi sabi, make a few changes and then give me back. So that's suspense. Pocket veto, okay. Aro, there's no specific time limit mentioned in the Indian constitution as to how long the president can keep the bill with himself, okay. Bill to ani ase, to time limit kiman time de tai assent diwo lage, limit nai do. So that's one loophole in the Indian constitution, which is included intentionally to give that power to the president in times of একটা situation থাকে where Modi বা over হিন্দুত্ব ideology হিন্দুত্ব philosophy চলা আছে বলে তো কিন্তু হিন্দুত্ব pro হিন্দু bill একটা pass করলে আছে তাতে pocket veto president bra use কৰিব পাৰিব bill তো তালহাতে pending ৰাখি থাকিব সেইটো বি পাৰিব দে president bra so that's again another option. But you always have to remember that money bills cannot be returned for reconsideration, which means Indian Constitution there, out of respect, it is a president that signs, but the Constitution be intentionally quasi financial matters that money bills that Modi ji and his council of ministers full power as in the Indian Parliament. Okay. The money bill it can only be introduced in Lok Sabha. We will learn about that later. But money bills cannot be returned for reconsideration, which means it is only the money bill that the president needs to give assent to out of obligation. He cannot reject it, he cannot keep it under suspense, and so forth. Which bills can the president return? Money bill the return grow na paro de. Kitabi na paro. Money bill the kiki aise president be sukupon gona sign koribo lage. Money bill the ina ase. Money bill the sukupon gorigina sign koribole lage. But ordinary bill, any kind of bill, okay, any kind of bill, ordinary bill, it can be sent back. And Constitution amendment bill, no, okay, it cannot be returned. Must give assent if duly passed under Article 368, which means Article 368 though, it's an article that gives the Indian Parliament the right to amend the Constitution, okay. Now, once the amendment procedure, once the voting process is done, it's very difficult though. Special majority, 2/3 of the members present and voting, and then 50% of the total membership of the House. Uto, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, they pass Huigina, President Lahate Aishigredo, the President must give assent, okay, for constitutional amendment. So these are the 3 conditions, and these are the 3 type of veto powers of the President to keep in mind. Now, these are the only 3 points that you need to know about veto and then about bills that can be returned. Okay. Now, pardoning powers of the president, we discussed that earlier, right? So we have the pardon, we have the reprieve, we have the respite, we have the remission, we have the commutation. Okay. Now, pardon. Pardon means complete acquittal. Complete acquittal, it removes conviction and sentence. Please go through it, please read it and see if you guys can understand it. Okay, I'll just have a sip of water. Pardon, complete acquittal, removes conviction and sentence. For example, you were convicted of conspiracy, okay, against the union government, and new evidence came to light after the judgment was made by the Supreme Court. And if the president assesses the new evidence that came to light, and then he finds that you are not guilty, then the president can give an order that removes your conviction or your sentence completely. Okay, so that means pardon. Okay, so the president can pardon your conviction and your sentence. And reprieve means temporary stay of execution. For example, if you murdered someone and then you were given death penalty, Okay, death penalty, and the president feels like there's still something missing. Okay, there's still something missing that he can ek bar garne give temporary stay of execution just for temporary halt. Okay, a pause, um, a pause in the judgment, judicial judgment, and respite means reduce sentence due to special circumstances. For example, you you were arrested for a financial crime, and then you were given a life sentence of 10 years. But in those 10 years, in the first 5 years, you were very obedient, you were very good, okay? And based on your character, the president can reduce your sentence from 10 years to 5 years. And you can go out of jail in 5 years. That's like special circumstance, usually the reason for good behavior. As a prisoner, if you have good behavior, the president can reduce your sentence due to special circumstances. And remission means reduction in the period of sentence. Again, it's very similar, but if the president feels like your sentence is a little unfair, just for stealing a bottle of Coke, you were given a sentence of 2 years, the president can reduce it to 2 months or 3 months, okay? And commutation, substitution of one form of punishment for another. Supposing you murdered someone, let's say, and then you were given death penalty, right? The president can commute it to maybe life imprisonment. No morabi will be life jail rakitivi. That's called commutation. Okay. So these are the ways in which the president may grant pardons. And it applies to court martial, union laws, and then death sentence. Death sentence to commutation. Okay? And then court martial and union laws, which means court martial means army kan laga, army, navy, air force. Armed forces kan laga judgments se takbi, the president can grant pardons. Okay. Now again, the president has another power. We discussed a lot of powers of the president. We discussed the executive, legislative, judicial power, emergency powers, and so forth. And we also discussed the veto power, right? And we also discussed about the power to grant pardons. And now we have the ordinance making power. Okay, ordinance. Ordinance simply means law. Okay, it passes a law, an act. Ordinance means an act of parliament. The president may promulgate an ordinance, may pass an act, okay, when the parliament is not in session or immediate action is necessary. Sometimes immediate action is necessary, like let's say for example, in the state of Delhi, it is directly administered by the president, and we know about the air pollution in Delhi. If it needs immediate attention, and if the president cannot wait for the parliament to go through the due process of voting and so forth, emergency he can promulgate an ordinance, he can pass an act, okay, which has the same force as an act of the parliament. And so again, another condition, immediate action. Another condition, when the parliament is not in session. When the parliament is not in session, though election time de thake, few months karni, okay. When the parliament is not in session, utu time de tai enact robare, or sometimes the government fails. We have seen that in history, okay. If you look at the Indian history, you will see some instances where the government failed and then the parliament is not in session. And utu time de, the president may promulgate an ordinance. So features, though, it has the same force as an act of the parliament, and it must be approved by the parliament, which means immediate action time, it must be approved by the parliament, okay? It must be approved by the parliament, but when the parliament is not in session, within 6 weeks after the parliament reassembles, which means election khotom hoise dan aise, the ordinance though itiadak to chuli as though the parliament though Lok Sabha election khotom hoise and the new government was formed, within 6 weeks it must be approved by the parliament. If not, it gets cancelled. And if it is approved by the parliament, the ordinance can go up to a maximum of 6 months. 6 months karne class ordinance, okay. Etu biside validity khotom hoi jay. Aro natun recharge koro lagibo na ina last ekta. So that's the ordinance making power of the president, which means he can enact laws, right? Temporary karne huli bi emanta power asile the president. The president has that much power. But it needs to be approved by the parliament after its reassembly within 6 weeks. Okay, and the ordinance can last for a maximum of 6 months. Parliament not in session, the president issues the ordinance, the parliament reconvenes, right? Reassembly, and then it can either approve or reject. If it rejects, then the ordinance will lapse. Important case, TC Wadhwa versus State of Bihar. You will please go and you can research on that. Repeated repromulgation of ordinance is unconstitutional. The time they TC Wadhwa versus State of Bihar, they misused the power of the ordinance. They kept on using that power to to enact laws for the state. Okay, so it be kita about abuse bhi hui jai na, abusive bhi hui jai. So. But that's related to the governor, not the president. Even the governor has the ordinance, which is very similar to the president. Now, impeachment of the president. How can the president be removed? We have talked about the powers of the president. Now, how can the president be removed? That's another discussion. Now, Article 61, they mentioned the president may be impeached for violation of the constitution. Okay, violation of the constitution ekla digina se. Details further digina nai, just violation of the constitution. Now, how can the president be removed? The first step is the removal of the president. Its discussion needs to originate in either of the houses, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha they originate rubo, and then 14-day written notice to diwa lage. 14-day, at least 14 days to diwa lage written notice to, signed by at least 1/4 of the members. 1/4 of the members. How many seats do we have in Lok Sabha now? Right now, 543. Right, 543 divided by 4. Okay, divided by 4. Kiman ulabo uti iman number of members pa sign gurigina. 14-day notice to diwa lage. Only then the House must pass. Let's say it was introduced in the Rajya Sabha. 14-day written notice dishe, and then 1/4 of the members sign gurigina se. The House must pass the resolution. The Rajya Sabha must pass the resolution by 2/3 majority, special majority, okay, of the total membership, okay. And once it is passed, it is sent to the other house, Lok Sabha, and then the Lok Sabha will investigate the charges. And once the Lok Sabha passes, if the second house also passes the resolution by a 2/3 majority, the president is removed, okay. Very difficult to remove the president, only by special majority. The same process as constitutional amendment, the president is very difficult to be removed. The parliament alone conducts impeachment. Now, for the election of the president, who are involved? MLA or MPP, state kan la MLA kan be, or central la MPP. But president remove kurule time dito, kali parliament e class. Remember that, okay? For its election, the state, the union, but only the union participates in the removal or impeachment of the president. Now, the vice president, okay? Election, first vice president election, indirectly elected by members of both houses of parliament. Okay? Now, it uses the same system, single transferable vote, but election of the president, the state or union, everything is the same except that in the election of Vice President of India, it's only the parliament, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. These are the only two houses that participate in the election of the Vice President. Okay, so election discussion is done. We have the constitutional position. He is the second highest constitutional office, which means if the president is not feeling well, let's say, if he is sick, if he is unwell, right, or if he is removed, and currently there's no president, it is the vice president who takes over as a president. Okay. Next, immediate replacement as a vice president. So vice president pichide kun howa by chance president no achanak muri jese. Vice president ase vice president by achanak kali muri jese. Who becomes the next president? Any guesses? Chief Justice of India, okay? Chief Justice of India. Chief Justice of India. Very important distinction. A very important point to be noted. So he acts as president during vacancy or absence. Now qualification is the same as the president. He needs to be a citizen of India. He needs to attain a minimum of 35 years. he must be qualified to be elected to the Rajya Sabha. It means citizen of India, this and that, no criminal record, no house of profit, this and that. Very basic qualification. So this is the overall constitutional position, election and qualification of the Vice President of India. Okay. Now, coming to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, constitutional position. What is his constitutional position? He is the real executive of India. Okay. He is the head of the government. He is the leader of the Council of Ministers. He is the principal advisor to the President. Principal advisor to the President. He is the leader of the Lok Sabha. Please go through these 5 points and see if you guys can understand. You understand real executive of India and head of the government. You also understand that the Council of Ministers and the and Narendra Modi, they are usually considered the government. Okay, government, the ruling party. He is the head of the government, leader of the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers, principal advisor to the President. That's very obvious, right? The President always acts on aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. And who is the head of Council of Ministers? It's the Prime Minister. Okay, and he is the Lok Sabha, leader of the Lok Sabha, if he is a member. And usually, the Prime Minister is usually a member of Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha. So, if he is a member of Lok Sabha, he will be the leader of the Lok Sabha. Okay. Now, the Prime Minister is the pivot of the parliamentary system. The President connects everything, right? The Prime Minister connects everything. As you can see here, the Prime Minister is the principal advisor to the President and Cabinet. He chairs the Cabinet. He is the head of the Cabinet, and then he is the head of he influences the Indian Parliament as well. And civil services, again, every law enacted by the Prime Minister, again, it is enforced by the civil service servants, such as the IAS, IPS, IFS, and so forth. And the Niti Aayog, which is the planning committee of the Indian government, it makes plans for the entire country. And by default, the Prime Minister is the chairperson of Niti Aayog. Okay, and then he is also the leader of the nation. So he is the pivot, the central figure in the overall governance of the country, the Prime Minister. Now we will be studying in a more technical manner here. Appointment and powers of the Prime Minister. Appointment, he is appointed by the President, which is obvious, right? I don't need to explain that. He's normally the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. Who is the majority party? Which is the majority party in the Indian Parliament? The majority party is the BJP, right? He is the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. Now, what are the powers and functions of the Prime Minister? It's the same as the Chief Minister. He forms the Council of Ministers. He allocates portfolios. Portfolio means any kind of ministry. Like, for example, here we have Tamjan Manba, who is the advisor, who holds the portfolio of advisor to advisor of NST, right? And then we have Pongshi, who is the advisor of railways and civil aviation. And then we have Tamjan Imna Along, right? Higher education. We have Jacob Zimomi, public health engineering. And we also have the deputy minister portfolio, T.R. Zeleng and Y. Patton, and so forth. Okay, we have Kaito, road and bridges minister, and so forth. Hekani, industries and commerce advisor, and so forth. Okay, these are portfolios. So similarly, we also have portfolios in the central government. So defense minister portfolio Diwo, finance minister portfolio Diwo, railway minister portfolio Diwo, and so he allocates the portfolios. Okay, it is the prime minister that allocates portfolios, just in the same way that in the state it is the chief minister who allocates portfolios. Rio, right? So manu Rio ke impress kore try kore na MLA kan sab portfolio phal lage do, minister post lage, advisor post lage, and then the funny thing is that we have 29 advisors, okay, and then 12 ministers, which means 41 out of 60 MLAs, 41 manu portfolio booking as the Nagaland. Tamadamazo, Nagaland, usually the Pomdi Hagedo, even Nagaland, the Ini, Panaidena, Rio B, Kushirakola took us though. One Nagamanu get politicians can get. Now, he also chairs the cabinet meetings. Cabinet means the council of ministers, and then advises the president, coordinates government policies through mainly the Niti Aayog, okay, these days. And then it represents India internationally, right? He always goes abroad, represents India everywhere. The Prime Minister can recommend the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Now, this is a very important point, okay? The Prime Minister can recommend the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Why would he wish for the dissolution of the Lok Sabha? Lok Sabha kile girai diyomun jay. Prime Minister ba kite ba the majority na thakoi jay na. So instead of trying to go for vote of no confidence means a vote taken by the members of the Lok Sabha to test the majority in the floor. Okay, right now the BJP has the majority, but if some people wishes to move a vote of no confidence, they can do so, and then the people will vote, and then maybe Modi like against vote Kurishigule Pishimanu, he needs to step down. That's called vote of no confidence. Now once Modi steps down, if anyone can prove a majority, that majority will form a government. Now in some instances, the Prime Minister taido vote of no confidence to taigari the insult us, which is why he can recommend the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Pura dissolve koribi or re-election koribi. Nah, re-election, not giving the opposition a chance to form a government. Now, which means that re-election koribi, there's a chance that he could be the Prime Minister again. Nah, with the karpi kilo pare. And it happened once or twice in our history during the Prime Minister Morarji Desai. He resigned after losing his majority, and his successor Charan Singh, he resigned without ever facing the parliament. He was a little scared about the vote of no confidence that would be processed against him. So instead of being embarrassed, he said, dissolve Koribi. And then the president, he looked at all the possibilities, dissolve Koribi, and then re-election was held. Okay, so we have such cases in the history as well. Now, appointment and powers of the Council of Ministers. And now Council of Ministers kumpun ase. So the Council of Ministers is considered cabinet ministers. Okay, and we have the ministers of state. There's the cabinet minister, the ministers of state. The ministers of state, the deputy ministers. It is the deputy ministers in Najulai, but it is mentioned in the Indian constitution. But it is up to the ruling government to create portfolios for deputy ministers. But Najulai, we only use cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and then independent judge and ministers of state. Cabinet ministers means the main central minister as the main the big ministries tadela cabinet minister kanto cabinet ministers ko, and ministers of state to small ministries or departments, independent charge, which means they are not subordinate to the cabinet ministers, they hold it independently. But ministers of state without the independent charge, just the ministers of state, he comes under either the ministers of state or the cabinet minister. If the department is a little too large, they can have one cabinet minister and then 2 to 3 ministers of state. They work under the cabinet minister or ministers of state independent. Okay, so this is how the Council of Ministers is divided. Cabinet ministers kan Amit Shah and then there's ministers of state independent chairs like Kiren Rijiju, and then we have other ministers of state and deputy minister and so forth. Now, the Council of Ministers, the Modi and then his Council of Ministers, aid and advise the President, along with Modi, and then formulate government policies, implements laws, administer ministries. Okay? So, aid and advise the President, you understand that? Formulate government policies, The Council of Ministers tahan bra policies can formulate kore, laws can tahan bra formulate kore, and then they introduce it to the Indian Parliament, and then the Indian Parliament will see whether this is right or this is wrong, and thereafter they pass the law. Last time labi ina hoishido Citizenship Amendment Bill 2019. Whose idea was it? It was the idea of Amit Shah and Narendra Modi, right? And their Council of Ministers. They introduced this bill in the Parliament, and then the Parliament passed it. Okay, so they formulate government policy. They are the ones that act as a think tank group that makes policies for the country. The only job of the rest of the members of Parliament is to look at it. Palna biaze, palaze guledo acha vote, biaze guledo no. Okay, they cannot formulate policies. The rest, non-council ministers can. Now, cabinet versus council of ministers. Kwan is na cabinet minister do. Cabinet minister do peshi kumdi asde. Larger departments can la. Council of Ministers to ase, Minister of State Independent Charge and Minister of State utuando, Council of Ministers pitor de ase ba. Cabinet kole to utu ekta core cabinet thake Modi la na. Council of Ministers maju debi. Smaller body, very small body, senior ministers can like Amit Shah Khan takes major policy decisions and meets frequently. They always meet frequently, okay, cabinet ministers, but they rarely meet the Council of Ministers. Independent judges come in jola jaga de. So core body within the Council of Ministers, very few people they come together to form the cabinet. Okay, so every cabinet minister is a minister, but every minister is not a cabinet minister. Nah, how you got it? Now we have the Attorney General of India. Attorney General of India. He is appointed by the President, okay? The Attorney General of India is appointed by the President. And he must be qualified to become a judge of the Supreme Court. Like I said, the Attorney General of India is the legal advisor, okay, to the Union government. He must be qualified to become a judge of the Supreme Court. Functions chief legal advisor to the government of India, represents the Union before the Supreme Court, and gives legal advice to the government. Ito tak to bujishina. And one special right that he is given is that he can participate in parliamentary sessions, okay? Which means he can sit, he can listen, he can give his opinion and so forth, but he cannot vote. Is the Attorney General of India a member of Indian Parliament? No, okay? He is not a member of Indian Parliament. But he can participate in parliamentary proceedings and sessions, but he cannot vote because he's not a member of the Indian Parliament. Now we have the Parliament of India. It consists of the President, the Rajya Sabha, and the Lok Sabha. The President, he is a part of Parliament. He gives assent to bills. Like I said, assent means tala yes. Tala yes, he gives assent to bills. Any bill passed by the Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha, the President's assent is required. And Rajya Sabha, Council of States, Lok Sabha, House of the People. Now, the Parliament consists of two houses, the Rajya Sabha and then the Lok Sabha. Okay? Lok Sabha and then Rajya Sabha. What did I say in the pre-foundation class? How are the members of Rajya Sabha chosen? The members of Rajya Sabha are chosen by the members of Legislative Assembly of that particular state. For example, Phangnon, Amikan laga Rajya Sabha laga MP Phangnon do public pro vote diya na do. MLA kan ba vote digina single transferable vote de. Mon Nagaland la MLA kan ba vote digina Phangnon ke phatala ase. Which means she is someone politically chosen by the MLAs. Okay, Rio Kiki kan line de phatai. Will be Subamurn Lok Sabha la MP do public kan pura vote disido. No, we talked about Christianity. Christian versus Hindu as a Chumben Muri can not be. Now it's so funny, okay? As Nagas, so funny. Even Chumben Muri is a good Christian though. So it was a battle between the Christian and the Hindus who do election time day, and then the churches they encourage the people to vote for Subramanian, and then surprisingly Subramanian won. Even Subramanian was surprised. Okay, Subramanian is one of the most wonderful persons I've met in my life. I met him personally a few months back, and he's such a humble human being. Okay, he deserves to be our representative. Now, Subramanian was the people voted for Supangmoran, but Phangnon was chosen by the MLAs, which means real ba Phangnon ke vote di de na assembly de some manu Phangnon ke vote di like udo. So Rajya Sabha do MLA kan ba choose kore, Lok Sabha do people manu ba choose kore. Okay, so Modi ji is a member of Lok Sabha, Amit Shah is a member of Lok Sabha, and so forth. Now Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha together they form the Indian Parliament and then head the President Agiwa. Very simple, right? The Indian Parliament. Now you understand how people they get elected to Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha and they form the Indian Parliament. In terms of numbers, we will discuss that. Now, main functions of the Parliament of India to make laws. Okay, like I said, any law, any bill can be introduced by a member of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Even Supangmoran can introduce a bill in the Parliament. Okay, he can introduce a bill, and if the majority of the people they vote in favor of it, then the bill will be passed. It's very simple. But they make laws, and they control the executive. How do they control the executive? How do they control the executive? For the executive, let's say the Council of Ministers, Modi kan law kiman pass korle mun chai gulibi. It's the Parliament that checks it. It's the Parliament that votes on it. Okay, even if Modi wishes to enact a law, if the Parliament majority of the Parliament doesn't support it, then the law cannot be passed. And then they approve the budget. Again, Parliament, everything that Modi does, he submits it to the Parliament. And then the Parliament will check whether this is right, this is wrong. Inala say approves the budget, represents the people. The Parliament of India represents the people. Supangmoran represents the people. Phangnon represents the people, the Naga people. And then they speak on behalf of the Naga people in the assembly. And the Parliament, they amend the constitution. I talked about special majority time and time again. They amend the constitution, okay? The Parliament of India. Now, we have the Rajya Sabha. The maximum strength of, after the Rajya Sabha and then the Lok Sabha, we will continue with the rest tomorrow, okay? It's a very vast subject. Now, Rajya Sabha, maximum strength 250 members, but at the moment, the present strength is 245 Rajya Sabha members. How many Rajya Sabha seats do we have here in Nagaland? We have one, okay? We have one. How many Lok Sabha? One, okay? So, total India de 245 Rajya Sabha members. I say, minimum age, I said it earlier, 30 years. You need to be 30 years in order to contest in Rajya Sabha. The presiding officer, the chairman of Rajya Sabha is Vice President by default, okay? We call it ex officio, right? By virtue of his role as a Vice President. The office of the Vice President, ex officio, he is the chairman of Rajya Sabha or the presiding officer of Rajya Sabha. Now composition, 233 elected members are there. Elected like Phangnon, elected. But 12 members are nominated by the President. The President nominates 12 members. I talked about nomination, right? So if the President nominates 12 members, and when it is time for the President to be impeached, to be removed, right? If these 12 people are given the power to vote in matters of the removal of the President, don't you think that they will vote against it? Like they will support the President, right? Ito ni tahan ki vote corona dire. Ito ni tahan ki vote corona dire. Term, it's a permanent house, Rajya Sabha. 1/3 of members retire every 2 years. Now what is 1/3? Let's 245 divided by 245 divided by 3. 81.66. Let's make it 82. 82, 82. Okay. So you can see here, let's say this is year 0. Year 2000 buiye, and then year 2002, 2004, 2006. Okay. In 2000, year 2000, 1/3 of these members will retire, which means 82 members will retire. The remaining baki kan the right? And then the kali 82 like election lo there. Aro tahan uti 82 do kita retire after 6 years, right? So 2060 retire do. The year 2 there aro 2002 there people who were appointed in the year 1996. After 6 years, 2002, the election thakibo. So which means every 2 years, 1/3 of his members, na 33% of the members, that election thake. But Lok Sabha the ek purpose pura khatam gure do, khatam gure na aru re-election loi do. Will be Rajya Sabha the permanent as in the sense that every 2 years, 1/3 of his members, 33% of his members are re-elected. Okay, which means the remaining they keep on going. So it never stops. It is never dissolved. Rajya Sabha is never dissolved. Okay, every 2 years, 1/3, 33% of the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha members are re-elected. Tanla election thake. So it's a permanent house, which is why it is called a permanent house. Lok Sabha do sob girai di like parba. Aro election aro natum loi do. Rajya Sabha do inane. Kumba kuri thakibo, kumba aro re-election lobo, kumba kuri thakibo, kumba re-election lobo, kumba election lo adam de paki khando continue karna thakibo. Aro tan aiwo, aro ala khando tan la time ele tan election lobo, aro utan continue ko na inya jai. Now Lok Sabha, the maximum strength is 552. Present strength 543 elected members as per the constitution after the abolition of Anglo-Indian nominations. Now, recently, Anglo-Indian, the president could nominate 2 members, okay, of Anglo-Indian descent to the Lok Sabha, which was removed by the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act. It removed the power of the president to nominate 2 members to the Lok Sabha of Anglo-Indian community. Either the Anglo-Indian Gushugli, the British Sando, Monkili nominate court na. That question came up in the parliament, and accordingly the parliament decided that it should be removed. Okay. So Anglo-Indian do ita do nai. We had 545. Now we have 543. 543 elected members. Okay, after the abolition of Anglo-Indian nominations. Term is 5 years, and minimum age 25 years. Rajya Sabha 30 years, President 35 years, Lok Sabha 25 years, and presiding officer, who presides the Lok Sabha sessions, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Okay, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Now, why is Lok Sabha more powerful than the Rajya Sabha? Because Lok Sabha controls the Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers the Bishop the Lok Sabha la thake. Now, money bills can originate only in Lok Sabha, which means puisa do khali Lok Sabha la hate originate kuro pare. Okay, and it can remove the government through a non-confidence motion. Who is the government? Modi ji and his Council of Ministers, right? So, with the no-confidence motion, remove kuro pare. And this is Lok Sabha versus Rajya Sabha. Please go through it. This is the final slide for today. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a revision of the discussion that we already had. Now, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, elected by the Lok Sabha from among its members. Okay, Speaker of the Lok Sabha is elected by the Lok Sabha from among its members. He presides over House proceedings. The Speaker of the Lok Sabha will be the presiding officer, and then he will maintain the order and discipline of any kind of Lok Sabha session. And he is the only one who decides whether a bill is a money bill or not. Okay, Modi ji, because Rahul Gandhi doesn't have the power, right? He's in opposition, and whenever Modi ji introduces a money bill, Rahul Gandhi sometimes goes against. Okay, whenever Modi ji tries to introduce a non-money bill as a money bill, because money bill though Rajya Sabha they don't have the power to reject it. Now, if it's a money bill, it can be easily passed in the parliament. Okay, now what Modi ji did was he introduced an act. Okay, I won't mention which, but he introduced a bill. Saying that it's a money bill, whereas it is not a money bill. He only did it so that it could be passed very easily. Now, Rahul Gandhi, what did I can say? Okay, he complained against it, saying that this is not a money bill, and why are you trying to fabricate it, right? Why are you trying to lie? But the decision whether that bill is a money bill or not raised with the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. So who is the Speaker of the Lok Sabha loyal to? The BJP. So the Speaker declared that it is a money bill. Okay, so it is only the Speaker who decides whether a bill is a money bill, not Modi ji, not Rahul Gandhi. It's a Speaker, but usually the Speaker to kun thage majority ruling government lai thage ba. Nah, that's how Modi ji can manipulate the entire country. So much power for one single man. Protects parliamentary privileges. The Speaker, it again, we will discuss about that later in the class. Parliamentary privileges. There are many parliamentary privileges. Exercises a casting vote in case of a tie. So many vote this year, and then the total vote is 200. That is the only time when the Speaker can vote. Okay. Rest of the time they vote na de tai. Chup chap thage. Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He is a member of Lok Sabha, but he cannot vote. Only when there is a tie, equal thage utudan the Speaker vote kore. So sessions of the Parliament. Parliament normally meets in 3 sessions every year. The monsoon session, winter session, the budget, monsoon and winter session. Budget session they do ki garne for budgeting. Okay. The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, in the month of Feb, she always reads the budget, right? The central government budget. And so in the month of Feb, she will read it out, showing all the expenses and all the future expenses as well, the past expenses and the future expenses and the projected fiscal rate and so forth, and inflation target, deflation target, so forth. She will read it out in the Parliament, and then accordingly utula hisab debi funds can allocate for it budget session day. Okay, let's say there's 1 lakh crore, 20,000 crore will go to MG Energy, 20,000 crore will go to Ministry of Agriculture, 10,000 crore will go to Ministry of Education, and this and that. Budget allocation, so budget session day, pak kore de pusa. Itu pak kora pusa do rest of the year, pura rest of the year to pusa cholawa every ministry na, ina thage advance bro. So budget session and then monsoon session do, yeah, for any kind of issue they can, but the rule says that not more than 6 months shall lapse between 2 sessions, which means if it's held in the month of Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, before August, beyond August though, na jawa lage. At least 6 months, 6 months or less thakiwa lage, gap between 2 parliamentary sessions. Okay, so they have budget session, monsoon session, and winter session. But monsoon or winter for any purpose other than budget. But budget session they talk about the union budget. So these are the parliamentary devices. Okay, that's the final. We will start with types of bills tomorrow. Parliamentary devices. Now, how a parliamentary session is conducted? First is the question hour. Okay, first hour of every sitting. The first hour of every sitting, the question hour again. Members come but they question ministers regarding government policies. Dharmendra Pradhan ke question bro, Minister of Education as a তখন মিনিষ্ট্রি ইমান ক্রোর দিছে উলিবি ইমান ক্রোর যাইছে ইমান ক্রোর হইছে আৰু ইমান ক্রোর পাচিছে বাটকিলি ইমান ক্রোর একলা পাচিছে the Dharmendra Pradhan bami ko na inala discussion ekta thakibo question hour de the government policies can discuss pro, and 0 hour it's not mentioned in the Indian constitution, but 0 hour starts immediately after question hour. A break low down and then comes 0 hour. It was asked, okay, I think last year's mains or prelims day question hour 0 hour law kudisha. So you have to know which comes first. Okay, I think the statement was that the first hour of a parliamentary sitting is the question 0 hour in Aisha statement based, na. So it was the answer was wrong. Put the statement wrong, but some people wrote yes. So question hour and 0 hour, that confusion, a lot of people get confused. But first is question hour. Why do we get confused? Because 0 is the question la age di ho nisna na, numerically speaking. 0 is beginning. Anyway. So 0 hour comes after question hour, okay? And then we have the adjournment motion. We will talk about 2 adjournments later on. the raises urgent matters of public importance, and then in the adjournment motion, act the important public matters, that they will raise it up. That's called adjournment motion. And calling attention motion, it draws the minister's attention to urgent public issues. So these are some of the parliamentary devices, and I will give you notes on the rest of the devices. I will also be manually explaining to you. We will have a kind of parliamentary session, okay? I am planning on one practical parliamentary session, and that is where I will give you the rest of the devices. So for now, this is enough. We will have the STV, the voting. We will vote for the president. We will have a practical, I think most likely this Saturday. And we will also be having a practical for a parliamentary session. Okay, parliamentary session. The Saturday roundtable discussion will be transformed into a parliamentary session. Maybe this week or next week, but we will have it. Okay, so then you will understand how everything is conducted.